Hi, Julie.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
So I have to tell you, I was in Charlottesville over the weekend.
Yep.
We talk a lot about the food issues,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
And so we had lunch at a place. 90% of their food is grown within, or it comes from within 100 miles of the restaurant,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to try it out. Let's see what it's
Sure.
like, right? And it was good. $9 pancakes, I have to say.
Yeah, of course it was.
I mean,
Local.
big pancakes, but still $9, right?
Right.
But their menu board, and I'm not saying the name of the restaurant because I don't want to give them
Right.
too hard a time.
Go ahead.
But anyway, but on their menu board it said, locally conscious food served here. And I thought to myself, I want my food to be unconscious when I eat it.
Yes, precisely.
Globally conscious, locally conscious.
Yeah.
I want it to be knocked out.
Yeah, we went. There's a restaurant near us where at the end you go through this sort of whole rigmarole to actually order your particular entree. I will not name what they serve there. And at the end, you're to give a certain amount to charity, and they hand you a list. And it's so stressful to pick out the charity at the end because you're sort of scanning the list and you've got a line behind you. And so a portion of your bill or your order goes
charitably, I guess.
Yes,
when you go
exactly.
in.
And it's just the stress of picking out the appropriate. So yeah, I think there's a little bit more. I mean, Panera has opened some stores where you only pay if you can. There's a couple. Yeah.
Well, I will say.
It's great, but I mean.
Yeah. And I will say this: the locally conscious chicken and waffles that I had were awesome.
Yeah,
very,
they better
very
be.
good.
I bet they're expensive.
That was actually 12, which I would say for a brunch item that's
Sure,
okay.
That's not bad.
It's a big pancake. I mean, but $9 for a pancake.
Very fancy food, Cam.
Well, we wanted to do something nice for the kids.
Yeah,
so we went out and splurged for brunch.
Luckily, my children, if you do something nice for them, they're still requesting McDonald's. So
I also every now and then want to expose them to
sure
places where they have to be on their best behavior, so they understand that manners isn't something that I talk theoretically about.
Right.
That it is required in certain settings.
Yeah.
So
right.
it's good.
Napkin in your lap, elbows off the table.
It's good to let that happen.
Yeah.
By the way, had I known that the pancakes were $9, we would have gone to the place down the road that opened up in like 1951. It looked like the Greasy Spoon Diner. Right.
Probably much better.
But they don't show you the $9 pancakes until you go inside, and then of course that's the one thing that your kids will eat because it's the one thing on the menu that they recognize. Oh, pancakes. And
right.
Like,
yeah. Little kids don't understand that chicken and waffles go together.
It's kind of perhaps a racket.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, listen. Speaking of kids, Christina Hoff Summers had she's got a book out, and it's out. It's been out for a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
The War Against Boys: How Misguided Policies Are Harming Our Young Men. And your colleague Charlotte Hayes, writing at IWF, has a piece on Susanna Hoff Summers, who says that school has become less hospitable to boys.
Yeah, it's a real problem. Look, I'm a mom of 3 boys, and I'm thrilled with the schools and the teachers that my children have had, but I think there is a problem in schools today of treating boys like little girls with hyperactivity. And the truth is that little girls tend to be very dutiful. They sit down, they're more quiet, they're happy to do whatever quiet work is required. Little boys have trouble. They're a little bit more rambunctious, a little bit more full of energy. And I think, certainly when our country is considering Common Core and some other standardization of education, that's really troubling because it treats all students exactly the same. They are not there. It doesn't allow for variation. And what Christina Hoff Summers talks about is that the way in which schools are operating now, it's very welcoming and it's a good atmosphere for little girls, but it's very hard for little boys to sit still, to not have, in some schools there isn't recess anymore because many school administrators felt that recess was allowing kids to be too aggressive.
Yeah, I thought this was amazing.
Yeah.
Because as I sat down to read this article, I thought to myself, all right, I had to sit in class. I had to do all of these things that girls have to. What was so hard about this? But then I start reading what's been going on.
Yeah.
And Science Daily, according to them, since the 70s, school children have lost close to 50% of their unstructured outdoor playtime.
Yeah.
39% of first graders today get 20 minutes of recess a day or less.
Right.
Kids in Japan get 10 minutes of play every hour, so that's more than an hour during a school day. And I will say it goes even beyond that, because I know in my kids' old school, kids in lunch had to sit at the table. You could not get up. You could not go talk to a friend at another table. You really weren't even supposed to talk to people. It was
Some
very
schools are
prison-like. And this is elementary school.
Yeah. This is happening more and more, by the way.
That hurts. Kids aren't little adults.
No.
And they do need to be able to have some time where they just are able to be kids.
There need to be outlets.
Absolutely.
And there are, I have to say, I'm very happy with the school my child is in, and my children are in a public school, and we've had really good luck so far. And I have 3 boys. But afterwards, I think this is really telling. And again, this is a personal story. I'm not trying to suggest something based on a personal story. But after I get my boys, they play outside, and they run, and they are full energy for about 2 hours after I get them from school. They're desperate to get rid of that energy, and they're playing with sticks, and they're pretty aggressive, and they tumble with each other, and it's a little bit alarming sometimes to watch them. I'm always worried that someone's going to break a bone, but they have so much pent-up energy that they've been holding in all day. And so we do a lot of free play, and I think more parents need to do that. I think we also, as parents, need to help teachers by allowing our children, encouraging them to get outside after school to work off some of this energy. I think part of it is teachers have these kids who go home and sit inside, and so I think we need to encourage more outdoor play and more exercise for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that Christina Hoff-Summers,
Christina
from the Bangles, Christina Hoff-Summers' sister.
Yeah.
Anyway, Christina Hoff-Summers had 3 things that schools can do. One of them, bring back recess. The other was turn boys into readers, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
As an avid reader myself,
Yeah.
My 13-year-old Andrew has discovered that he likes to read within the past couple of years, and I'm really, really pleased. And he, now that he's found authors that he likes, he will pick up a book instead of turning on the TV or playing a video game. My son James, with the exception of the new Lego Marvel superheroes game that just came out, that kind of threw him. But he was on a book binge for a while, and that's really important, because if you don't read, as Susanna did it again, Christina Hoff-Summers says, good reading skills are critical to academic and workplace success. Yeah. You need to know how to read, and you need to, I think, in some ways, I think you need to enjoy
it. Helps reading. Attention too. I mean, when you read, it takes them away to an exciting place, but it's different. I mean, so do video games, but the difference is you actually have to concentrate and read the words and learn about how to sit still and actually read a book. That takes a certain amount of I think dedication, and that's a skill really for children to learn. And so she says how important that is. And again, as parents, we need not to just rely on kids reading in school. We read to our children every night. My husband reads to them at least a half an hour to 45 minutes every single night. You don't need to do it that much. We happen to. But the latest studies on that show much better academic performance among parents who read to for children whose parents have read to them.
And right along with that, the third thing she recommends is work with young male imagination. And this is everything from don't suspend kids for going pew, pew, pew with a pencil. Right? Don't suspend kids for eating the Pop-Tart in the shape of a firearm. She uses the anecdote of a third grader in Southern California named Justin, who loved Star Wars, pirates, wars, and weapons. An alarmed teacher summoned his parents to school to discuss a picture the 8-year-old had drawn of a sword fight, which included several decapitated heads. The teacher expressed concern about Justin's values. The father, she writes, astonished by the teacher's repugnance for a typical boy drawing, wondered if his son could ever win the approval of someone who had so little sympathy for the child's imagination.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's a huge problem.
It is.
Because we now have the mindset that, to even imagine these things is somehow horrible and twisted and misguided, and you know what you're going to turn into.
Right.
You're going to turn into a monster.
Yeah, and again, I think schools are in this heightened, they're at such an elevated state. They have no, it's common sense is gone, senses of humor are gone. It is a constant state of panic at schools, and which makes many of these administrators react the way they do, overreact to, nibbled on Pop-Tarts and children using their fingers as guns and shooting, air guns in their front yards, suspending volleyball players who come to a party to pick up their friends completely sober. I mean, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a sort of almost like a police state at the schools, which is not a creative or good environment for children to learn.
Yeah, she also says, she quotes this celebrated author and writing instructor, Ralph Fletcher, who advises teachers to consider their assignments from the point of view of boys. Too many writing teachers, he says, take the confessional poet as the classroom ideal. Personal narratives full of emotion and self-disclosure are prized. Stories describing video games, skateboard competitions, or a monster devoured a city or not. So he says teachers should permit fantasy, horror, spoofs, humor, war, conflict, even lurid sword fights. Are our schools turning our boys into emo kids, Julie?
Absolutely.
Is that happening here?
Yeah. Look, I see it in the writing
I
assignments.
don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I see it in the writing assignments a little bit that come home. I think that kids are encouraged to not only put their feelings, but there are certain topics that are appropriate and certain that aren't, which really, we should be allowing children to explore their own minds and what rattles around in there instead of sort of constantly correcting them and directing them. That is not called creativity. It's unfortunate, and I think boys particularly suffer in that kind of environment.
Absolutely, and again, I think boys who and not only boys generally,
Yeah.
but boys who grow up with, dare I say, traditional masculine values.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't think we're too far. I don't think we're too far away in some parts of the country. Let's say if a kid from rural West Virginia moved to the Tacoma Park School District.
Yeah.
Right? And he started talking about, I'm going back home this weekend. We're going to go hunting. Whoa! Why would you do that to the poor deer? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are, and he might not be able to explain why because he's 8.
Yeah.
But he would be perceived as a freak, and he would pick up on those cues.
Yeah.
And he would be, seen as an oddity, not just by the other kids, but by the adults in that society.
My son watched my husband split firewood this weekend. Now, most people in the neighborhood I live in, when a tree dies and they have it cut down, the tree is hauled away.
Right.
Not my husband. My husband saves every stump and log and branch, and he cuts it up, and we have a stack of wood that would make a pioneer proud. And but again, my husband was out there with an axe and a stump, and he was splitting these logs. Now, my son may very well go to school with a creative story about what happened with that axe, right? And I'm sure that really wouldn't fit in with the other other kids, because again, I don't see a lot of men in my neighborhood splitting wood.
Right.
There again, this
so
is
what you're saying is you're about 8 years away from your son saying, "Dad, why do you do this?
No, I'm only.
Why do you have to carry the axe around?"
I'm more worried that my son will be suspended for drawing a story with an axe in it, right?
My dad, the axe wielder.
This is dangerous stuff.
Well, listen, Julie, we didn't solve the world this week, but maybe next time you're here.
Maybe.
All right. Anyway, yes, I got it right this time. Christina Hoff Summers' piece at Time Magazine, IWF.org is where you can find Julie's writing. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.